What's up, everyone? This is Matone, Uncle Fox, and welcome to the Fight Versus podcast. I just want to get an update what's going on, but first, it's been a crazy week. Before we get into today's main story about Oak Flat, I just want to speak on something that's been hidden in our communities. The recent ICE raids and immigration sweeps happening across California, Arizona, and other parts of the country. We're seeing what we're seeing is wrong. That they're out here racial profiling, targeting brown-skinned people, tearing families apart, taking people away who are not criminals. They're working people, moms, dads, uncles, aunts, and children. And I know a lot of people say, they're enforcing the law, but this isn't about law. This is about cruelty. And, ICE is ripping people from their homes, their families, and treating them like criminals. Also, this past week, I saw the No Kings protest that happened in LA and all over the country, and I love seeing that because it's true. We don't need kings, and we never did. The protest showed a lot of unity, people standing up and against the government and this administration. So that was great to see. So this past Thursday, I got a text from my son. He works as an electrician on a construction site in Chandler, Arizona. He let me know that ICE was at his job site, and the first thing I asked him was, "Do you have your tribal ID on you?" And he said, "Yeah, he had it." And I had to remind him that ICE might detain him first and then ask for his ID later. And I also told him to keep his location on just in case. And how sad is that, to tell my own son, who's native to his land, who has to carry proof on him to show he belongs here, so he doesn't get deported in his own homeland. I mean, it really hit home when that happened on Thursday. Even though my kids are grown up now, I still have to warn them about where they're going and what they carry and how to stay safe. And it shouldn't be like this. So, to all my native relatives out there, and families, please stay safe. Watch each other's back. Be alert. These raids aren't just hitting immigrants. They're creating a path for racial profiling for all of us. They're deciding who's legal and who's not legal. And like we have always said, we're here first. And how can anybody be illegal on stolen land? So also, this past week again, on June 18th, which marked the Apache Independence Day for San Carlos. They recognized the tribal government back in 1954. They implemented a constitution in 1954. This recognition wasn't a gift either. It was earned through generation of survival, resistance, and resilience, and it stands to a reminder of our right to self-determination and the continued fight to protect our sacred lands, just like Oak Flat. So we remember, we honor, and we continue to fight for our people and what they believe in. And it's also important to acknowledge June 19th, which happened this past week, Juneteenth, a day marking the end of slavery in the United States, a day of liberation for the black communities and all the ones that remind us how connected our struggles are. As indigenous people, we recognize the shared history of oppression, survival, resistance, and we stand in solidarity with all the black relatives today and always, and our indigenous black relatives. So today, this episode is just going to be about, the EIS, the final impact statement, and it was released on June 16th of this week, and that means the countdown has officially begun. The U.S. government could transfer the sacred Apache land to Resolution Copper. But Apache Stronghold isn't backing down. They just announced that they're taking the fight all the way to the Supreme Court, and they're also sending letters to the president asking him to directly step in to review this horrible mine deal and to stop structuring of Oak Flat. So let's get into what we know for sure, what we know for now. So the final EIS dropped. The government is officially green light, saying that they reviewed everything and that the raids move forward with the land swap. So once this countdown ends, Oak Flat could legally be handed over to Resolution Copper, a foreign mining company. Now, what we said before, but I guess it needs to be said again, that this isn't just about Apache land in Arizona. This is sacred land. Apache people pray here, hold ceremonies there. They connect with the ancestors and creator there, and and this mine, if allowed, was literally swallow this land into a crater as deep as Grand Canyon. So here we go. The clock is ticking. But again, like I said, the Apache Stronghold is still in this fight. This week they announced they're going to file a petition with Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. tomorrow. So their legal argument is clear. The land swap violates religious freedom. Oak Flat is not just a site, it's a living spiritual place where ceremonies happen. Destroying it is like bulldozing the church or worse. It's a cultural elimination in real time, you can say. And while this country may not always honor indigenous sovereignty, it does claim to protect religious liberty. So, that's a wedge the Apache Stronghold is pushing, and it's the only thing that's held this transfer back so far. Like I said before, the Apache Stronghold has also written a formal letter to the president. They asked him to take a real look at what's happening, to follow, not just to follow the paperwork and the minor prophets, but to hear the spiritual call of the Apache people, of all indigenous people, to honor and promise that sacred land won't be destroyed just for copper. So people ask, what's really at stake? So if Oak Flat falls, it sets a dangerous pattern that the sacred land can be traded away just like that. It tells us that indigenous communities, that their prayer doesn't matter, that our ceremonies aren't protected, that prophets come before our Apache way of life. But also with Oak Flat, it's about who we are as indigenous people. It's about how this country keeps trying to erase our presence while exploiting our lands. I know a lot of natives don't like the word religion, and honestly, I don't either. It's never sat right with me. Growing up, I went to Catholic school on a reservation, not because we were Catholic, but because it had better education than Rice School at the time. And Rice, if you know the history, used to be a boarding school. So yeah, I grew up, going to Catholic school, at that time. So I know, there's a big difference between organized religion and our indigenous beliefs. Our way is older than the churches, and it's in the songs we sing, it's the water we pray to, the mountains we protect, and the fire that we all gather around to dance. And it's not something that you do once a week. It's a way of life. It's a way of being. And no court in this country fully understands that. But, the government doesn't protect a way of life. Not ours, anyway. So what it does protect is religion, specifically, Western religion. The kind with churches and pastors. So that's what this country claims it was founded on, freedom of religion. So when it came to the fight for Oak Flat, using the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, that was the only legal path that was left to try to protect Oak Flat. Even if the word religion doesn't fit us, the language was used to speak in their courtrooms, not because it's honor us, but because it was the system understands and it responds to. So it doesn't feel good. I struggle with it. I know many others, other natives do, but what choice do we have when our sacred sites are on the line? When our prayers and ceremonies are dismissed, our culture and not, it's not religious enough to count. So it's frustrating, but it shows just how much this country still doesn't see us, doesn't hear us, doesn't understand that our way of life isn't religion, it's life. And just to be clear, this is just my opinion with the word religion. I haven't spoken with the Apache Stronghold directly about how they view the term and what it means in their legal and spiritual strategy. I'm just speaking my own experience and the way it sits with me personally. So in all of that, this is what Apache Stronghold is doing. It's not just a legal fight, it's a spiritual one, and it deserves all of our attention. So what can we do? If you're listening to this, you care about sacred land, religious freedom, and justice, then now it's time to act. Visit ApacheStronghold.com. Follow them on their social medias, Facebook and Instagram they have. Sign the petitions if it comes around your way. Write to your president, your reps, your senators, your state senators, and share this episode. Tell people what's happening before it's too late. And most importantly, send blessings, however you do it, in your beliefs, in your culture, in your tradition. Send strength to the Apache Stronghold. Because we may not all be in D.C., but we're all in this fight together. So again, thank you so much for listening. The clock is ticking, but we all still have a chance, for our Oak Flat, for our ancestors, and for our future generations. This has been a fight for Oak Flat existence. So stand strong and speak up and never stop defending our sacred lands. Thank you.
Thank you all for tuning into the Fight for Existence podcast. If you guys want to keep up with the podcast in general, what you could do is follow the social media account. The Instagram account is going to be Fight for Our Existence. Again, that's Fight number 4 Our Existence. Go ahead and give that a follow. And if you guys have any questions for us, or you guys would like to be on the podcast, in the Instagram there's a link. Go ahead and click that. No matter what kind of platform you guys are listening to this podcast on, there's always that plus or that follow button. So go ahead and click that so you guys can get notifications when we upload our next episode. And if you guys are listening on Spotify, what you can do is go ahead and rate the show. And if you guys are only listening on Apple Podcasts, what you can also do is write a review for the show. Thank you all for tuning into the Fight for Existence podcast, and we will talk to you next time.